I the meanest? Sure enough. Am I the prettiest? Sure enough. Am I the baddest mofo go down around this town? Sure enough. But who am I? Sure enough. Who am I? Sure enough. I can't hear you. Sure enough.
All right, guys, joining us for the second ever Stuff Happens show is the one, the only, the head janitor at Garcia Promotions, Mr. Eric Garcia. How we doing today, bud?
What's up, Rich? I'm doing good, man.
Oh, I like that shirt. What's that? Is that special pink edition?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I hope everybody else picked one of these up at the women's event. Exclusive right here. Exclusive.
You always got the exclusive look. Exclusive shoe, exclusive chain, exclusive mop bucket when you clean it up.
Let me tuck that in.
All right, man. Eric Garcia, president of Garcia Promotions, man. That actually doesn't quite give everything. That gives just your last name and some promotions, man, of what you actually do, because you actually have Fury Fighting Championships, SubHunterPro, two of the largest shows in the nation, both for MMA and for grappling. Tell us a little bit, one, about how you got started in combat sports, man.
So I started with Travis Took at Team Took MMA back in, I think, 2008. So going on 12 years training with him. It started off as just wanting to learn jiu-jitsu, just a hobby, you know, and then I met Jace Petrie, and he got me kind of started in striking and stuff. He told me, pumped my head up a little bit, told me I was getting good, so
right.
I figured, why not try an amateur fight, you know, and it started with that. Did a few amateur fights. Then I went into the promoting side of it, because there was a big draw of fighters, and there wasn't a lot of local promotions at the time to give these guys a platform. You know, I think it was just Mick was the only one around, him and Lone Star Beatdown back then.
Yeah, I think. So your last fight was 2013.
Yeah.
And so your first fight was roughly was it 2010 or 2000 somewhere? So right, that was. Right, yeah, so that was right at the end of Saul doing the Young Gun shows and Renegades and all that. So you kind of just missed that first wave, I guess, and kind of caught that second wave of Lone Star Beatdown and then Legacies.
And I was always a fan too, like of Saul stuff. So when I used to go to the Verizon Wireless and watch fight, you know, and I saw Pineda fight a few times back then. My internet, is it good? Are we good?
It's off and on. You'll be all right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I was into it back then, but I was like, man, I don't know how to fight the way these guys fight. So if I want to do it, I better get my training and stuff. Yeah.
That's funny, man. The first show that we covered for the CageDoor.net back in the day, Barry and I, Saul wouldn't give us media passes. So we bought tickets and sat in that top rafter-like area of the Verizon and watched Patrick Bierschwal win the 185 Young Guns title back in the day.
What year? 06, 07?
Yeah, so I think it was like 08, 09. Yeah, I think it was closer there because it was one of the last Young Guns card. I'd been to a few Renegades cards just as part of a guy's training, but I had never been as media. So when I went as media, it was a much different experience than being in someone's corner.
Yeah, I used to like it over there at the Verizon because they had like that lower tier. They had like tables with the chairs. So like me and my dad would go, and you know, my brothers and stuff. It was cool.
So transitioning out of fighting, you know, when you left, you were 2-0 as a pro. It wasn't like, you know, you had some losses and decided to do something different. What made you decide to stop fighting and just stay on the promotion side?
It was just so much, man. You know, as I got older, first of all, I had 3 knee surgeries throughout my training and stuff with fighting. So it was just getting harder and harder to keep up with those camps and my body trying to, you know, put in 2-a-days, 3-a-days on top of having kids and a wife, and life just caught me, you know. So doing that and promoting fights at the same time, I mean, it was I had no time. I had no personal life anymore, and it was taking a toll on my family. So I had to kind of decide, did I want to and I never had plans to make fighting a career and go to the UFC or anything like that. I mean, I think if I would have stuck to it 100% and I would have not started promoting and I would have put anything into that, maybe I could have made it. Right. But I wasn't willing to roll the dice and put my family on the shelf. You know, I wasn't in my 20s. You know, I was already in my early 30s.
You know, back at that time, you know, too, you were training with a monster team. I don't think people realize the amount of talent that was there at Travis's gym. One of the first interview we did for Cage Door was Chad Robichaux, but the next two we did was Jace Petrie and Andrew Craig. And, you know, you look at it now, and the guys, you're training with some monsters back then, man.
Yeah, we had Andrew, we had Jace, Todd Moore was in there. You remember G. Morera was in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had Andrew Muskies. We had guys that, I mean, we were dedicated, man. We had a dedicated team.
Yeah,
and we all kind of, as we grew, and first Jace kind of went out, and he wasn't training as much, and he was my primary striking coach. Andrew moved to Austin. G, you know, kind of
got like 9 kids. You got like 9 kids or something now.
So the MMA part of our team started dwindling, you know, and we all stayed active with jiu-jitsu. You know, like I kept my jiu-jitsu base for sure, but you know, we all kind of went our own ways, and everybody kind of got off the fighting career. And then Andrew actually went to the UFC, you know, so
yeah,
his training regimen stopped as well, and it went a different route.
Yeah, you know, it was something to watch that team. I remember the early, you know, Cage Combat days, and it seemed like every title winner was out of tooks, man. And it wasn't like you were giving them like, here's some scrub to come fight. They had to fight legit dudes, but like y'all had a crazy camp at that time, man.
Yeah, because I mean, I think Aaron Kroon, you remember Aaron Kroon? He's like 6'4", 45 pounds. He ridiculous. Had the 45 belt. I had G with the 170, and G fought Jeffrey Neal. He fought Santos Rosales, Sean Holden. Like he went through some guys that moved up and kept fighting after G stopped fighting.
Yeah, you know, when you look back at your early cards, man, you had a lot of UFC talent. You look at Jeff Neal. You had Jeff Neal fighting as an amateur on your cards. You know, what made you decide? Now, somewhere along the line, you went from Cage Combat into Fury. So what made you decide to get out of doing the amateur side and, hey, let's be professionals now?
I think I knew that there was a limit to what I could do as far as just hosting amateur events. You know, I could only take these guys so far. And if I wanted to, in time, become a premier organization, I was going to be able to say, hey, this guy's going straight from the pro event into a bigger show. I didn't have that avenue if I would have just stayed with the amateur shows. So at first, it was a little rocky when I did do it, because Mick was here, and LFA or Legacy, they were doing pro events, so we kind of had to schedule around each other. But once we got going, you know, it was fun. It was good. It ended up good.
You know, what was that like back in the day? You know, you were able to work with guys like Mick and to kind of work schedules around, because even as big as the city of Houston was at that time, there still wasn't as many gyms as we have now. Like, I don't know how many hundreds of gyms we have now. And there was really only certain depth when it came to the actual talent in the city. So how were you able to establish that relationship with Mick? And I mean, you guys are still friends now.
Right. I think, you know, part of it was he saw how much I supported his events by being a fighter.
Right.
You know, because all of my fights, all I did was fight for him on the amateur level and the pro level. So I had a relationship with him and Colin, you know, early on before I even started promoting. And I think I ran more all amateur shows than they did. So the amateurs that I was turning pro, I would have them first, I think. Like the early amateurs with the 0-0, 1-0, 2-0, maybe 3 fights or less would be going into FuryFC, and those would be mainly the guys that I would use. While Mick established, and they were taking guys that, you know, had 4 or 5 plus fights to be on TV and whatnot. And it ended up being a thing where these guys that had only a couple fights or no fights, and they were building their pro record on my circuit, then all of a sudden now we established something that they can fight for Fury, get a few fights, get a few wins. Mick and Colin started catching wind of it and seeing who these guys were that were winning, and they would pull them into the legacy shows.
So, fast forward a few years here, and Legacy kind of moves on. They get on Access TV, HDNet at that time. Then comes Access TV, and they started doing maybe 4 to 5 shows a year in Houston. They really kind of got more nationwide at that point. How were you able to fill that void? It really was a big void that was kind of left, because for a while there, if you remember, there were shows every month. There was promotions popping up. Everybody wanted to come in and be a promoter. What do you think kind of helped? One, how'd you guys survive that time, and what kind of kept you going, man?
We just stayed dedicated. I mean, there was times that we could have quit after any show that, oh man, we're not gonna make money on this event, or we lost money, the card didn't hold up. You always have those things where weigh-ins and you're like, if we lose a few fights and we're down to 6 fights or 7 fights, what are we gonna do? So right. I think the way I planned out fights and how I stayed on top of these guys, and I made myself very personable and approachable to every fighter. I think that helped us a lot. A lot of the promotions would match 8 fights and think that, okay, well, we matched 8 fights. We're 6 weeks out. We'll have an 8-fight fight card. Man, it didn't work like that. So if you would look at my early cards, you would see the card get released and it would be like 22 fights. And people would be like, man, this dude's crazy. He's going to do 22 fights. And I knew already. I said, man, by the time we get to fight day or weigh-in day, we'll probably have 12. We'll lose those, So matching big cards, kind of helped us stay in the loop of keeping solid cards. Me personally talking to every fighter and coach and manager that we were dealing with that was on the card kind of helped, to where I let them know, hey, look, I'm really serious about this card. It's going to happen. I need you to stay on your medicals. I need you to stay on this and that and make sure that everything gets done. And then me really pushing tickets, and telling these fighters how important ticket sales were for a local promotion that doesn't have all the sponsors. If you don't have guys selling tickets, you'll have a very short-lived promotion.
Now, fast forward now, just on the Fury side, FuryFC is one of the most sought after MMA organizations for people want to compete for. I'm sure you get messages all day, emails, texts, Instagram. Everybody wants to fight for Fury now. And 2 things. One, how do you decide that a fighter is ready to fight on a Fury show? Because it is unlike a lot of other events. There may be events that are in big cities and do some things, but your production is on a completely different level than almost every other show that's not on a national television called UFC. How do you, how do you find the right talent now for your show?
I think we do a little bit of research, and we'll look at the guys, see where they fought. If they have history with us and we know we can count on them, that's huge. If we know the coaches, knowing a coach and how he handles his fighter and how serious they are, that means a lot too. If I have a coach that I've worked with in the past in the amateurs, and they'll hit me up and say, hey, I got this roster of guys. If I got a good relationship with them and I know that, okay, their guys are going to make it unless they have a serious injury or something like that, and then getting with the matchmakers and stuff and talking to them. We do our research and make sure that we're going to get guys that are going to be dependable.
Now, when did you decide to put so much emphasis on production? Because again, your shows are unlike a lot of other, whether you can call it regional or even national, your shows are unlike a lot of other shows.
I think that the production side of it is what was going to separate us, so seeing other organizations and what they brought to the table, we had to have something different, so bringing in more lighting, bringing in LED screens, smoke machines, bringing in the 40-foot walkout ramp to the cage, just stuff like that. I felt that it gave the competitors something to look forward to, the fighter something to look forward to. They want to know that, hey, I'm going to show up to this show and I'm going to feel it when I walk out, when I hit that ramp and that runway and I'm headed to the cage or to the stage or whatever. I know that I'm going to feel like a star. All eyes are going to be on me. And a lot of guys, they look forward to that. You know, that's a big part of it. Versus if you walk into an arena and you see just the cage and all the lights are on, and you're fighting in, you know, somewhere where there's
Right.
no nothing but the cage. You know, you're going to be able to say, well, do I want to go here? Do I want to go there?
You know, when you look back, do you have a favorite fight? Number one, do you have a favorite fight that's happened in Fury, and do you have a favorite event that you've done?
I mean, Fury won for sure. You know, I had Travis on that card. Travis took.
Right. Terrible person, but
him
yeah.
And, him and Rashid. You know, that was a good one. And then Alex Morano was on that card. I forget who he fought. It was a guy from Oklahoma, Rob Wood.
Oh,
Alex
yeah.
Rob Wood, and Rob Wood was like a 6-0 undefeated pro, you know. And I think he ended up beating Alex that night.
Yeah.
That'll always, obviously, it's the first Fury card, so that'll probably be the, you know, one that sets real hard. And then the card that I had, Liamana was on the card versus Ricky Tercius, and Jacob Silva fought Sean Solis that day.
Right.
You know, that was a solid card too.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned, you know, Alex Morano, you mentioned Jacob Silva. You know, these are all guys who are now either on Dana White's dancing show, or they are on Dancing with Dana, whatever you call it, man. Or they're actually in the UFC. You know, you've got like your champions, Ike Villanueva, in the UFC. Adriana's last fought for you in the UFC. Jacob Silva now has his second shot on Dancing with the Stars. Leo Mana, Alex Morano. You know, Fury is now definitely one of the places that you go to if you want to get to the UFC. You're not just a stepping stone for another promotion. You're actually a stepping stone straight to the UFC now. You know, how do you think that, you know, what does that mean as coming from a fighter standpoint to know that, man, I could be sitting in a fight and Mick Maynard literally could be sitting out in the audience watching me?
It means a lot, you know. That's, for me, it's always been personal, like, especially with these guys, to see somebody like Adrian Yanez, you know, who just fought and got that $50,000 bonus. You know, to see somebody like Daniel Pineda, who went to the UFC, got cut, came back to the regional level, and, you know, he can tell you from experience that, like, I would call him and say, man, we're going to do whatever it takes to get you back there. You know, so it would be me, and then I would call Mick, and, you know, I would talk to Mick personally and say, hey, what do we have to do? Like, how many wins does he need, or how do we get him back? Same thing with Jacob Silva. Like, the day after Jacob fought Lira, and I called Mick that next morning, and I said, Mick, there's nobody left for Jacob. Like, what do we got to do to get him there? You know, and it takes those calls, but having that personal connection with Mick, you know, it gives me a sense of comfort too, that I have something to work with that I can do for these guys. But man, it feels great because I know a lot of these guys that are really serious, like Yanez. I watch Yanez come up in the amateurs, you know, and do very well. But I feel like I have the opportunity to help guys change their life. And obviously I've done it with some, and I'm hoping in the future there's going to be a lot more. But it's one of the best feelings, you know, to be able to watch these guys go out and live their dreams out.
So now that brings us to Submission Hunter Pro, which is a different type of setup than Fury. Fury, you're building stars, and, you know, you want, to a degree, those stars to leave you to go to the UFC, because that only makes Fury even more valuable. But Submission Hunter Pro is you are actually giving everyone in the city a chance, if you're blue belt and above, to not only compete on the big stage, but also your coaches can go compete on the big stage, and they don't have to just be Gordon Ryan. Tell us one about how Submission Hunter Pro came about, and, you know, what drove you to do this.
So Submission Hunter Pro came about in 16. I think March of 2016 was our first event. And I knew there was a lot of guys out there, especially guys that I trained with, that wanted that spotlight without having to worry about getting punched in the face and kicked and kneed and elbowed. But they would still get the ring announcer recognition. They would get the walkout, you know, the music, the lights. They would get all the stardom. So Submission Hunter Pro came about. right around that same time, obviously Fight to Win had started doing their shows in Colorado. So we kind of broke into the market like a month apart. It's something cool, like you're saying, because you can actually get out there and compete with your coach, the same night, somebody that's
Right.
You you can be on the same stage with your professor at different times or whatever. And I really bought into the Submission Hunter thing and wanted to start doing the Submission Hunter thing to help generate revenue for FuryFC, and that worked for a little while, and then I completely separated them, and it just took off. We started doing more and more Submission Hunter shows, going state to state, and here we are now, man. 3 years.
I mean, you look at it, you're going on Submission Hunter Pro 61,
yeah,
and you're at FuryFC 43. Right. So in less time, Submission Hunter Pro has surpassed Fury in just a number of shows. How do you divide your time? I mean, it's been a little easier the last few months since MMA couldn't happen in Texas. But how do you divide your time normally between, man, I got to match make this and I got to match make this?
It's hard. It's hard. There is no regimen for me. I really don't have a schedule. A lot of the thing with Submission Hunter Pro, though, it's a lot easier to deal with because you don't have to deal with the licensing department.
Right.
Different states. So with Fury, I can up and say, hey, we're going to New York next month without talking to licensing and making sure a promoter's license is in place, versus with Submission Hunter, you can basically find a venue and go to any state you want because it's non-sanctioned. And that is the main reason why so many Submission Hunter shows have been, over the Fury cards, because we're not having to worry about dealing with the licensing and the commission. And I'll tell you too, that's a lot of the reason why a lot more pro grappling are popping up now and they're lasting versus, these MMA organizations that don't last, because there's a lot more expense when dealing with the pro MMA card.
Now, speaking of expense, you are going to be the first MMA promotion to come back to the state of Texas since the launch of the beautiful COVID. Tell us a little bit about what's different from running a normal Fury card to this one.
It's been a headache. But I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. The COVID testing, number one, is going to be the main thing, the biggest thing. Every coach, every fighter, anybody that's going to be inside the cage on event day or in the technical zone has to be COVID tested. People that are going to be in the technical zone but not in the cage, they only have to get rapid antigen test. But everybody that's going to actually step foot in that cage, they have to do the PCR test, the PCR COVID test, and we have to quarantine them. So that's something that's going to be huge. All these fighters are having to, after weigh-ins, we'll run weigh-in, they'll get their COVID test done and have to go straight to the hotel to quarantine, including myself. I'll probably have to quarantine you as well, Mr. Bowmaster, if you're going to.
I thought we were quarantining together, man. I didn't know.
Okay.
I thought we just hanging out playing spades all night or something. So
that's probably the biggest thing. So I'm having to make sure that these guys are okay with the quarantine,
right,
and being in a hotel. 20-foot technical zone versus 10-foot technical zone. Different locker room setup. Different weigh-in setups. Some different stuff. It's going to make the show with quarantine and COVID. It's going to make the show a lot more expensive. At this point, to be the first MMA show back in Texas means more, than what it's going to cost to run the show. So I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Now, I know you got to break away in a few minutes to go pick up 7 of your 9 kids. I just want to get just some quick questions for you real quick, man. So 2021 is right around the corner. What do you see both for Submission Hunter Pro, and I know it's a little harder to forecast FuryFC right now because of the COVID regulations, but give me a number. How many Submission Hunter Pros we're going to see next year? How many Fury shows we're going to see next year?
I'm going to say minimum we're going to see 25 Submission Hunter Pro shows. Max, obviously, I probably won't be able to do more than 36. Yeah, I need to have some time. FuryFC shows, I think we're going to do at least 12, minimum 12.
Okay.
But if I can do more than that, we'll do more, but it's really going to depend on what the COVID and stuff.
Now, outside of your bullshit promotions, I've heard that you have just like a raggedy ass shoe game. So in your raggedy shoe collection, not including anything from China or anything you got from Pakistan, what is your number one shoe?
See, had I known you were going to ask this question, I would have it sitting right here. Show it. But I'm probably the number one shoe or the number one style.
Hey, what? Give me your favorite shoe to wear and your favorite shoe that you own.
So I'm gonna say Jordan Retro 1 is my favorite style of shoe to wear.
Well done.
And I'm gonna say my favorite shoe that I own is gonna be the Retro 4 Bread, like the OG Bread.
All right.
Even though that's not my favorite style to wear, that's still my favorite shoe. Like
now, do you have?
I really don't wear it as much because I don't like to scuff them up. You know.
Do you have a shoe that you missed out on that you wish you would have gotten?
You know, I do. It's a Retro 7.
Okay, all right.
The gray Space Jam.
Yeah.
Burgundy and the yellow. You know, and I've been looking for those. So that if they drop that shoe again, I'm getting it.
Man, the shoe that I missed out on that's driving me insane all these years later, it's not even a Jordan. You know, I love Jordans just as much as anybody, but I've got I love Ken Griffey Jr. and LeBron's in like 2014. They dropped a LeBron with the Ken Griffey logo on it and all this, and I bought the wrong size and I couldn't get them to change out the size because they didn't have my size. And so it's been killing me. I'm still trying to find that one shoe, man.
You have the wrong size shoe?
No, I sold it. No, I flipped it. I flipped it quick. Well, hey, man, where can all the fans learn more about Eric Garcia and as well as Garcia Promotions?
They can follow me on Instagram at EricG831, Submission Hunter Pro at Submission Hunter Pro, at Fury Fighting Instagram.
Hey, man, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I'm looking forward to doing big things with you next year in 2021. The promotion is growing. And, you know, for those who don't know, I'm the assistant janitor over there. So I get to go behind Eric and basically refill the mop bucket. So he don't have to go back and do that. So, man, hey, thank you again. I look forward to next year and have a great one, man.